He left on a quiet morning and vanished as if he never existed. That morning, Leonard Brooks, a 67-year-old retired bus driver from Atlanta, left home for a routine medical checkup. He never came back. No one saw him leave the hospital parking lot. No cameras, no witnesses, just one strange detail. His phone and wallet were still sitting on the kitchen counter, as if he had never left. His family called the police, but the case was quickly classified as a voluntary missing adult. There were no signs of forced entry, no sounds in the night, just a silence so deep it hurt. Until one damp afternoon, 10 months later, when a team of building inspectors entered an abandoned apartment complex in the southern part of the city. In the basement garage, they spotted a car tire sticking out from a pile of crumbled concrete. Leonard Brooks wasn't a man many outside Atlanta's West End neighborhood knew, but for those who did, he left a lasting impression. For 30 years, he drove a school bus for Fulton High and never showed up late once. Kids, black and white alike, called him Mr. Leo, the friendly driver who handed out chewing gum every Monday. After retirement, Leonard's world settled into 3 simple routines: the small wooden house he shared with his daughter, the rose garden where he spent nearly every Saturday morning, and the old radio that played nothing but 70s soul. He'd been a widower since his early 50s. His wife, Vanessa, passed away from breast cancer just 6 months after her diagnosis. Leonard never remarried. "My parents had the kind of love you don't see often," Camille once said. "After my mom died, it was like my dad forgot how to laugh. But he kept going. He took care of me, took care of the house, the kind of man who never quits." Leonard was meticulous. He wrote everything by hand from the day he fertilized the roses to when the water bill was due. He didn't trust online banking, didn't use email, and stayed far away from social media. For him, things had to be seen and touched to be believed. Camille Brooks, 34, is a social worker and Leonard's only child. She still lived in that old house with her father, a home always filled with laughter and the smell of fresh coffee. From her dad, she inherited a sense of integrity and carefulness, but she also had a fierce determination, the kind that made her the first in the family to graduate college. "My dad didn't go to college," Camille often told her coworkers, "but he's the smartest man I've ever known. He didn't talk much, but he always knew what to do." Camille remembers the morning Leonard disappeared in vivid detail. "I called him at 9 a.m. to remind him about his doctor's appointment. He answered with that cheerful voice, 'I know, baby girl. Don't worry.' That was the last time I heard him." After that, Leonard's phone went silent. When Camille got home, everything was in its usual place, the kettle still warm, Marvin Gaye playing softly on the radio, his reading glasses resting on the morning paper. But Leonard was gone. No sign of urgency. No clue he'd left. It was as if he'd vanished from the world the moment she turned her back. West End is an old but tight-knit neighborhood where people know each other by stories, not addresses. Every morning, Leonard stopped by Miss Nettie Johnson's house, a 78-year-old widow, to fix her coffee machine or just to chat. He never came empty-handed, Miss Nettie recalled. Sometimes a rose from his garden, sometimes a box of pastries from that Dominican shop down the street. Leonard's disappearance knocked the heartbeat out of the neighborhood. The mailman lingered a little longer by his gate. Church ladies passed around whispers. Even the little kids asked, "Why isn't Mr. Leo's bus running anymore?" In her small kitchen, Camille still sets out a cup of coffee each morning right where her father used to sit. "I don't know what I'm waiting for," she said. "Maybe a miracle, or just a reason that makes sense." November 3rd began like any other day. Camille brewed a pot of coffee before work and left her father a slice of banana bread with peanut butter, his favorite Friday morning treat. When she called to wish him well at his appointment, he chuckled, "I know, baby girl. It's a beautiful morning. Let's hope the clinic's not too crowded." That was 9 a.m. After that, his phone went dead. Camille figured he might have left it at home, not unusual for someone his age. But just before noon, a call from Brookline Clinic made her freeze. "We've been waiting for Mr. Brooks since 10:30. It's been over an hour, and he hasn't arrived." Camille left work immediately and drove straight home. The front door was unlocked. No signs of a struggle, no mess. In the kitchen, the kettle was still warm. Next to it sat the morning paper, the plastic wrap, untouched. Leonard's phone was on the table, still showing Camille's missed call. In the drawer by the oven, his wallet was neatly tucked away, every dollar accounted for. Everything was exactly where it should be except him. She called the police. 2 officers arrived in under an hour. They listened to her story carefully, but without alarm. He's had some mild depression before, right? One of them asked. Camille nodded uneasily. They filed the report, but the case was quickly categorized as a voluntary missing adult. In a busy city, an elderly widower disappearing without a trace just didn't rank high on the list. But Camille couldn't accept that. Deep down, she knew her father, a man who never left the house without telling her where he was going. He always leaves a note, she stressed to the officers, even if he's just taking out the trash. But the cold fact remained. No one had seen Leonard leave. No neighbors noticed his car moving. No cameras captured him leaving the street. It was as if he'd vanished. On the second day, Camille returned to the house and searched everything. Every drawer, every file cabinet. She checked his spare phone, his medical diary, even the doorbell camera, but nothing had recorded that morning. She called hospitals, asking if any unidentified patients matched his description. Nothing. A friend helped her check local shelters and senior centers. Still nothing. By the third day, exhausted and heartbroken, Camille heard the doorbell ring. It was Miss Nettie, the elderly neighbor. Her face was uneasy. "I'm not certain, but I think I saw him Friday morning." Camille turned, alert. "You saw my dad?" Miss Nettie recalled it was around 10 a.m. She had been watering plants by her porch when she saw Leonard standing beside a silver car parked by the gate. Next to him was a younger woman, brown-skinned, curly hair, wearing large black sunglasses. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Mr. Leonard looked tense. I assumed she was maybe a homemaid or something. Camille sank into a chair. Her father hadn't mentioned any plans besides his appointment. Who was this woman? And more importantly, why wasn't there any footage of that car? Miss Nettie's account pushed Camille to start her own investigation. She went door to door asking neighbors if anyone had security cameras facing the street. A family 2 houses down agreed to help. In the grainy footage, at 9:42 a.m., a silver sedan, possibly a Toyota or Nissan, slowly parked outside Leonard's home. The angle didn't show the license plate, nor the people inside. About 10 minutes later, the car backed out and drove away, seemingly with only one person inside. No one could say for sure if it was Leonard. Police said there still wasn't enough evidence to reclassify the case as a criminal investigation. So Camille did what she could. She posted flyers and missing person notices in local papers, on Reddit, in Facebook groups, and Black community forums across Atlanta. Weeks passed, then months. Not a single credible lead. No one had seen her father. No one reported seeing that car again. Camille hung his photo on the bulletin board at the supermarket where he used to buy vegetables. She visited bus depots and hospitals far from the city center. Once, she got a call about a man who resembled Leonard in Savannah, but it turned out to be a homeless man with no connection. Time passed. Hope faded. But Camille never gave up. Every morning, she still brewed a pot of coffee, still kept his chair at the kitchen table just the way he liked it. Somewhere in this city, she believed, there was still a missing piece waiting to be found. Nearly a month after Leonard disappeared, Camille was still making regular trips back to his house. But this time, instead of chasing big leads, she focused on the smallest details: the pens he used to jot notes, his pocket calendar, old mail, and scraps of paper written in his neat, deliberate handwriting. In the drawer of his desk, she found a stack of receipts neatly stapled together. One name made her stop cold. Tamika Rollins, Personal Companion Services. According to the paperwork, this woman had been visiting Leonard twice a month since the start of the year, helping with errands, medications, cleaning, and conversation. The strange thing was, Camille had never heard her father mention anyone named Tamika. In all their heartfelt conversations, he talked about Miss Nettie, about the old bus depot, about his domino group at the park, but never once hinted at needing a caregiver. Camille immediately called the number listed on the invoice. After 3 rings, a young woman answered. When Camille introduced herself as Leonard's daughter, there was a brief pause before the voice turned cheerful. "He was a wonderful man," she said. "I just helped with a few things. He was forgetful sometimes." But when Camille asked when she last saw him, Tamika went silent for a few seconds, then abruptly hung up. Camille didn't wait. She looked up the address on the invoice, a low-rise apartment complex in Riverdale, about a 30-minute drive from West End. When she arrived, she stood in front of Unit 2B. The place was quiet, curtains drawn tight. She knocked. No answer. A middle-aged woman taking out the trash glanced at Camille, then asked, "You looking for Tamika?" "Think she moved out." "Haven't seen her in over a week." Camille asked, "Do you know anything about her work?" The neighbor shrugged. All I know is she changed cars all the time. One day a silver SUV, next a red coupe, always wore heavy perfume. That made Camille's stomach twist. She remembered what Miss Nettie had said the woman standing next to Leonard on the morning he vanished had curly hair, big sunglasses, and stood beside a silver car. Camille snapped photos of the nearby license plates and returned home, a rising sense of dread tightening in her chest. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. Tamika wasn't just a helper. She knew Leonard. She knew his routine. She likely had a key to the house, and she might have been the last person to see him alive. Camille returned to her father's papers. This time, she combed through every financial log. Leonard kept a handwritten ledger dating back to 2012, every transaction labeled with precise dates, reasons, and check marks. But from June to September, something shifted. Each payment listed for Tamika Rollins was marked with a pencil check mark except for July, next to which Leonard had scribbled a tiny question mark. Then in August, he struck through the entry and wrote, "Verify amount appears incorrect." Camille's heart raced. Her father was meticulous. A question mark in his budget notes meant suspicion doubt. She called the bank, posing as a relative requesting account verification. After a few calls, a familiar bank employee gave her the info. Mr. Brooks made cash withdrawals at 3 different ATMs in August, totaling $6,500. Camille was stunned. Her father never withdrew large sums. His typical monthly cash use was just around $300. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape. A mysterious woman, suspicious financial activity, a sudden disappearance, and all of it led back to one name, Tamika Rollins. Just days after her trip to Riverdale, Camille never imagined the woman she'd been desperately trying to track down would appear unannounced at her front door. It was a rainy Wednesday afternoon in Atlanta. Camille was sorting through a stack of files when she heard the doorbell ring. She opened the door and saw a woman standing under the awning wearing a long beige coat, heels slightly splattered with mud. The woman smiled politely. "You must be Camille. I'm Tamika Rollins." For a moment, Camille froze. The woman she'd been chasing, the last known person to have contact with her father, was right there, as if this had all been some minor misunderstanding. Tamika quickly explained her reason for coming. "I still had a few of Mr. Brooks's things, just little items. I was going to mail them, but thought it'd be better to return them in person." Camille, hesitant but composed, invited her in. Tamika sat down and placed a brown leather bag on the table. She unzipped it and pulled out a clear plastic pouch. Inside were a blood pressure monitor, a few unopened blister packs of medication, a handwritten note in blue ink, and a single house key with a leather fish keychain Camille immediately recognized. Her father had used that exact keychain for the backdoor spare key. "He really was a wonderful man," Tamika began, her voice gentle, slightly trembling. "I was just a helper. But he was always so kind. He reminded me of my dad. Made coffee every morning, loved to garden. He'd tell me stories all the time." Camille listened closely, trying to stay neutral. Tamika sounded genuine, maybe too genuine, not in a theatrical way, but with the kind of familiarity that only comes from actually being inside that house. She mentioned the rose bush in the backyard, Leonard's habit of drinking peppermint tea in the evenings, even described the exact location of the cabinet where he kept his eye drops. The more Tamika spoke, the clearer it became. She hadn't just dropped by twice a month. She had been in that house often, possibly every week. She knew how to unlock the door without making a sound. She knew where the spare key was hidden. She even knew the combination to the safe where Leonard kept his documents. Camille's skin prickled. "When was the last time you saw him?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Tamika hesitated. "Early September, I think. He said he wanted to stop the service. Said he was saving money for something, I'm not sure what." Camille didn't respond. September was when her father had marked a question next to Tamika's payment in his ledger. "I didn't hear from him after that. I texted a few times, but got no reply. I didn't know he'd gone missing." Tamika's voice grew quieter. "When I saw your post in the paper, I felt guilty." After Tamika left, Camille sat motionless for nearly half an hour. On the table lay the medicine pouch, a short handwritten note from her father, "Buy more peppermint tea and that key." The same key from the photo of him gardening, with the leatherfish keychain dangling in his hand. Camille placed the key next to the image. No doubt, it was the same one. That evening, she left a message for the investigator handling the case, just an update about someone named Tamika Rollins, who had once worked with her father. But Camille's instincts wouldn't let her stop there. She went online, searched the number Tamika had used, traced connected social accounts. A different name popped up on Instagram, but the profile picture showed a woman who looked exactly like Tamika, standing next to a shiny red coupe, wearing a Rolex, and carrying a real Louis Vuitton bag. Another photo showed her at a party, red wine in hand, diamond ring catching the light, with a caption that read, "Work smart, live smarter." Camille felt it in her gut. Something didn't add up. No one making $25 an hour caring for the elderly lived like that, unless there was a secret. And that secret, Camille now knew, started inside her father's home. 3 days after that unsettling visit from Tamika, Camille returned home from work to find the back door slightly ajar. She was certain she had locked it before leaving. The kitchen light was still on, but the house was silent. Her heart pounding, Camille backed out, got into her car, and called 911. Police arrived quickly. No one was found inside, but the signs of a break-in were clear. A scuff mark on the back door, the office window slightly pried open, and paperwork tossed everywhere. The terrifying part? Nothing of material value was missing. Not the TV, not the laptop, not jewelry. Only Leonard's file drawers had been opened and many documents hastily shoved back. Camille knew instantly this wasn't theft. Someone had been looking for something. This time, the police took it seriously. They reopened the file and escalated the case to a senior investigator. At the same time, Camille remembered something Miss Nettie once mentioned, a simple line that now carried new weight. Mr. Leonard said something was off with his bank account. Camille and the investigator retraced Leonard's financial history. They uncovered a pattern of unusual cash withdrawals between June and September, each ranging from $1,500 to $3,000. The shocking detail? Every one of these transactions appeared legitimate, authorized by a power of attorney signed by Leonard Brooks. But Camille knew her father had never granted that kind of access to anyone. They traced the document, a power of attorney filed after Leonard had a minor hospital visit in March. The person who submitted it? Personal caregiver Tamika Rollins. From there, the investigation widened. Police uncovered at least 2 other elderly individuals who had once hired Tamika, both black, both living alone, both with financial irregularities following her involvement. One had since passed away from a stroke. The other was still alive but deeply disoriented. Tamika's real profile began to emerge. Multiple aliases, temporary bank accounts, even social security numbers tied to various addresses. A complex pattern of fraud, and Leonard may have been the only one who caught on. Camille remembered her father's last phone call. His voice had sounded calm, just like always, but now she wondered maybe he knew. Maybe he had been about to say something, or was preparing to act. That theory was confirmed when Miss Nettie recalled one more detail. The night before he disappeared, he stopped by with some pastries and said, "Real quiet, I'm going to take care of that Tamika situation soon." I asked him what he meant, and he just smiled and said, "It'll be all right." Investigators retrieved data from Leonard's old phone. In the device's cache, they found a note unsent, unfinished. It read, "Camille, if anything happens to me, check the bank." Something's wrong with the helper. The message was never sent, but it said everything. Leonard hadn't been confused. He hadn't run away. He had suspected. He had taken steps, and that may have been exactly why he disappeared. The abandoned building in South Atlanta was once a massive apartment complex in the 1980s, but it had sat empty for nearly 15 years. Locals avoided it, calling it the Nameless Shadow, a place whispered about because of fights, drugs, and the occasional scream echoing at night. No one ventured into the basement parking level. Most of the entrances were blocked by collapsed concrete. In September, a structural safety team was hired to assess the site for possible redevelopment. While measuring cracks on the ground floor, one engineer noticed an unusual fracture in a slab of concrete. Beneath it, partially buried in rubble, a single mud-caked tire stuck out. Police were called the next day. Excavation took nearly a week. The basement had partially caved in, making access dangerous and slow. Eventually, they pulled out a silver 2005 Toyota Camry, rusted plates, barely intact. The registration confirmed. The car belonged to Leonard Brooks. Officers peered into the cabin. There was no one inside. But in the trunk, among old blankets and broken items, they found a worn baseball cap, the kind Leonard wore every morning to tend his garden. Beneath it, a pair of brown leather gloves. Camille recognized them instantly, the birthday gift she had picked out for her father just last year, the tag still faintly visible. There was no body in the car, but investigators found traces of blood soaked into the back seat and remnants of scalp tissue embedded in the lining. DNA tests confirmed it. The blood belonged to Leonard Brooks. There was no official declaration, but investigators believed it was a secondary scene, a place where Leonard had either been killed or hidden before his body was moved elsewhere. The car had been pushed into the basement through a rear access ramp, now collapsed, likely chosen because it was one of the hardest places to reach. Whoever did it had meant for that car never to be found. At the same time, police traced Tamika Rollins' credit activity and discovered she had left Georgia in June, shortly after the break-in at Camille's home. Her last cell signal pinged at a highway rest stop along I-95, headed toward Florida. A witness in Jacksonville claimed to have seen a woman matching Tamika's description using the alias Tanya Richards to apply for a caregiving job. A federal warrant was issued, but Tamika had vanished like dust, just as Leonard had 10 months earlier. Camille sat alone beside the rose bushes. She placed her father's old wooden chair near the bed he had tended every morning, right where he used to post reminders like Water Mondays, Prune Fridays. On the back of the chair, she hung a small wooden sign, "Every morning, I still wait for you." It wasn't a cry of despair, it was a promise. She didn't need a conviction. She didn't need the world to agree he was murdered. She just needed one thing, for her father not to be forgotten. "My father didn't walk away," she said. "He was taken from me, from this community, from his own memory. No one knows how long Leonard's car had been there. No one knows who Tamika really was, or who she might have been working for. Some believed she was a lone scammer. Others suspected she was part of a network targeting elderly black men who lived alone. But perhaps the most heartbreaking truth was this: if not for that one tire sticking out of the rubble, the world might never have known Leonard Brooks ever existed.